Hey everyone, Freedom Chef here. This is the Liberty Kitchen. We are on Resolute TV. We're on episode number 4 for season 3. So we've had some pretty interesting stuff going on here, worldwide, globally, locally. There's a heap of stuff going on. We didn't do an episode last week. We followed up the Tokaji and Dana fam discussion with, I'm not going to call it a week off because we went and trekked about 21 kilometres, I think the Fitbit called it. Up through the coastline from Kiama to Gerringong, but by the time you wind in and out, up over the mountains and whatever, and the little bloke, he'd come along as well. We went, because we're on a mission to raise some money for the Soldier On charity. You might have seen some of the other threads, some of the live streams and stuff like that. We got a little crew of us looking to do our bit for veterans who are suffering the indignity of, well, going away, serving our country, or our people, serving Australians as best they know how, and then not being supported by the government. So as usual, I'd like to give a big middle finger to our government and their systems and all the bullshit that they purport to do while generally not fucking taking care of the people who take care of them. Other than that, this week, we've got the lovely Andrea Tokaji. She's back. She's joining us again from WA. We're going to discuss a bit of a recap of the WA elections, which were fucking epic. Anybody who wasn't watching should have been. WA is about as close to a socialist state now as you can get. The fucking Premier's just anointed himself treasurer as well. I mean, the guy's giving himself unbridled power. I'm waiting for him to change his title to Grand Overlord of all things West Australian. My Liberal Democrat guys got a bit of a pounding. And whether you liked their strategy or you didn't like their strategy, I wasn't personally a fan of the strategy. That's the strategy they ran with. They were the candidates. They were the guys putting their balls on the line. So even disagreeing with the strategy, I congratulate them for their work, their efforts. You know, Aaron has done a pretty good job overall. And you look at it all and you go, I would have done it differently. It's very easy to throw barbs at people from the sideline of how you would do it differently or how you would be a much better MP than Aaron or David or fucking any of these people in Parliament. But the reality is you're not in that position, and unless you're going to run as a candidate, get yourself elected, you've got no runs on the board. So, you know, like, I mean, I've run as a candidate and not been elected. You can imagine the horror and the shock. Do I think I could do a better job than most of these numpties in and around the Parliament sphere? I reckon I'd be a lot more honest. I reckon in certain areas some of them would be better than but I certainly don't think any of them would better represent freedom and liberty as a value, and I don't think any of them would be anywhere near as blunt and upfront about the fact that I think most of them are full of shit. Now that isn't something the Australian public necessarily are comfortable with in their parliamentarians, and I can live with that because, as we all know, I do this stuff to make a bit of noise, and if we get some more good people coming on board to fight the freedom fight and hold these totalitarians to account, then I've done my job. Now, our other guest this week, we've got the fabulous Nicholas Wildstar, Governor Wildstar from the US. He's back. He's just had a big series of run-ins with the law over there. He's running as a Republican, as a Libertarian, so I suppose a bit Rand Paulish in that context. He has some issues with how the Libertarian parties run over there. Heaven fucking forbid people had issues with how Libertarian parties were run. Business as usual. But look, the great Nicholas Wildstar, or the rapper Cue Ball, if you're not familiar, check out his music as well. But the guy's political. He's a good, solid Libertarian, and he's getting right stuck into the current governor of California. Who is it? It's King Andrew Cuomo in New York that Larry Sharp, our guy's picking fights with. And Gavin Newsom, they're trying to recall Gavin Newsom. He's the current governor of California. You know, he's broken every COVID rule. You know, one rule for thee, one rule for me, because he's a dick. And Wildstar's been at the head of the table as far as giving that guy as much shit as humanly possible. So, big shout out to Wildstar. Love the bloke, top bloke to talk to, A grade. So, check out for Resolute TV, Series 3, Episode 4. Andrea Tokaji with the Freedom Chef, Nicholas Wildstar with the Freedom Chef, and don't forget to support Soldier On. Check out Team Resolute. Their links will be in descriptions, and there's a Facebook page and all that sort of stuff. You know, I'm sharing that shit around everywhere because we really want to raise $2,500. We've just cracked 2,000 with a bit over a week to go. And on Saturday, me and the boy going up, he's going to be playing in a game of rugby league, pre-Canberra Raiders, Auckland Warriors. And on the Sunday, because, you know, we like to do shit, we're going to go and climb Mount Kosciuszko, because Australia's tallest mountain seems like the perfect place to finish up our soldier on march. By the end of me climbing Mount Kosciuszko with my 8-year-old, because my 8-year-old's tougher than most of the people getting around planet Earth, I want to see $2,500 donated to Soldier On. So come on, guys, get behind this A-grade cause. I don't get the money, I don't give a fuck. It goes straight to the charity, it goes directly to the people, and we do have actual veterans on our team, so we're not just blowing piss and vinegar. So guys, have a great day. Check out these couple of interviews, and I will talk to you soon. Hey everyone, ladies, gentlemen, and everybody, we're back again. I've got absolute superstar sitting here. Nicholas, the Governor Wildstar, or Governor Nicholas Wildstar. Mate, thank you very much for coming back, joining us again. Love your work, mate. You've been the busiest bloke in California recently. It's all been happening.
Yeah, man, I've been hard at work getting Gruesome Newsom out of office, our governor, you know. So we've been collecting signatures to remove him from office, and we've gathered over 2.1 million signatures for that effort. Right now, they're all being counted to see if they're eligible to get that special election kicked off. But it looks as if it's going to happen, which means I'll get my opportunity to serve the people of California sooner. I was expecting that election to be in June 2022, next year. But with this special election happening, it could possibly end up being kicked off around September, October, So if again, we vote to recall our governor, we'll also have a chance to vote for a new governor at the same time. And hopefully the people of California will choose me for that opportunity.
Mate, and I hope so too. So all of our interactions, I've been pretty impressed, not only with your intellect, but more importantly, I think you're actually a really genuine human, which is fucking sorely lacking in politics, mate. Sorely lacking in politics. I guess a big topic for you, other than trying to spear Gruesome Newsom out, which I'm obviously a long way away from, so I can't really sign the petition, and if I did, it wouldn't make much difference. But but you've got my supporters' full support to try and get rid of the guy. I think the more of these corrupt politicians we can put out on their ass, the better.
Exactly.
But mate, you had a pretty solid trial and tribulation pop up very recently, and I reached out because obviously we weren't sure if you were going to. I think 6 years you were threatened with.
Yeah.
What was the story, or what was the from the horse's mouth, my man?
Yeah, ridiculously, they were trying to put me in jail for 6 damn years for videotaping in court, which is actually happening right now with the Derek Chauvin trial. Is the police officer that killed George Floyd. He's on trial, and his court case is being broadcast publicly. Why? Because courts are a public place, and we, the people, should be able to make sure that we are documenting that process and making sure there isn't anything going on in there that's in secrecy. That's exactly what I was doing. I appeared in court in September of 2018 on some traffic citations and was videotaping, my court appearance. And it was just my own court case. It wasn't the entire proceedings of everyone else that was, there, but just my own. And the judge told me to stop in both cases, and I refused to do so. I let them know I had the right to freedom of press under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, as well as the right to a public court proceeding, guaranteed under the Sixth Amendment as well. So I informed them of this, and despite the constitutionality of my exercise of rights, I was again told to leave the courtroom, to stop, and thrown out of the courtroom. So a year later, damn near, I was traveling with my family and was pulled over, driving while black, profiled by police officers, and pulled over and arrested for a warrant out for contempt of court that I was completely unaware of. So the Orange County, where this happened in Orange County, California, Orange County prosecutor and district attorney's office chose to file charges against me for that recording in court. And I think mainly they did this because the videos that I had recorded, I put them up on YouTube and they went viral, you know, and nobody likes to be made a fool of, especially when they're acting unjustly, and their job is to uphold the law. So to clear their reputation, they brought me in as a criminal for contempt of court. I actually had another third court case that I appeared in court for, and I wasn't recording this time, at least to their knowledge. I secretly recorded that and made it available on my YouTube channel. But they didn't like that, and they didn't like me being in court the way that I was presenting myself and speaking to the judge. So I was arrested right then and there on the spot for contempt of court, and spent about 9 days in jail. I missed my son's first Christmas. You know, this was around the Christmas holiday, and I had to pay about $1,500 just to bail out of jail so I can enjoy New Year's with my family. So it's been a crushing experience, because this happened during this pandemic, actually before, but then it's just been drug out throughout this whole crisis, mainly because the justice system, or the law system, what I more so think it is, wants to make an example out of me. So just recently I had a court trial, and this was over President's Day week here in America. I was on trial in front of the jury and was found guilty of contempt of court by the jurors for, again, exercising my right in court.
It's a crazy, crazy system you guys have over there. And there are certain aspects of it I, as an Aussie, look at and I go, fuck, that's pretty cool. I like that. And then there's other stuff, of course, that you sort of look at and go, that really sucks. But I do like how you guys, I mean, Australia has a constitution, of course, but I reckon most people over here would have no idea what it said.
Like most Americans.
Yeah, well, I mean, you guys throw around your the First Amendment, the Second Amendment. You talk about it in everyday language. Most Australians aren't even aware that they have a constitution. It's just a funny difference, you know.
Well, the amendments pertain to the Bill of Rights, which was a piece later added, but the founding documents of this country are the United States Constitution, which basically talks about how the government should operate. The Bill of Rights, which talks about what rights of we the people, the government should respect and protect at all times, above all else, you know. And then the Declaration of Independence, which speaks of our sovereignty as individuals here in a sovereign nation. So those three documents combined, again, form our government and create the law and order and balanced system that we're supposed to have. But we see law officials all of the time abuse their authority, break the same laws that we're all expected to abide by. And it's gotten us to this point where we have complete lawlessness here in America. I mean, not only with the Chauvin trial, but with the Capitol riot on January 6th, you know, the upset protesters over the election storming the nation's capital. We've had the Black Lives Matter protests all throughout the country this entire time, and people upset about these lockdowns and the unconstitutionality and dictatorship that, you know, the tyrants like Newsom have, you know, used their power to impose on us. So we're very upset here in America, and you guys all across the world are watching a new American revolution happen right before your eyes.
Yeah, mate, look, it seems that way to me. And you've mentioned some pretty key topics. The Chauvin trial, whatever you pronounce my old mate's name. I think you and I discussed that last time because it was actually red hot right around the time we previously spoke. And I mean, look, the guy needs to be locked up.
Right.
He murdered a bloke in cold blood. I don't care if you got a badge or you haven't got a badge. It was fucking murder. And I don't actually care whether George Floyd, now I don't know what you guys, how you guys see George Floyd. Some people see him as he's turned into a hero. Some people say, oh, well, he's a bit of a scumbag anyway. The point being, I don't care if you've got a badge or not. You don't go around murdering fucking anybody. you don't have that right, regardless of whether he was a top bloke or a scumbag or, you know, the best, worst, whatever. It's not up to some cop to go and kill the guy. I mean, it's completely out of order.
Yeah,
and
when your job is to protect people. I mean, that doesn't
serve, we have that. Yeah, protect and serve, and kill them if you don't like them. Like, fucking really?
Exactly. And like I said, man, we've seen that happen too many times here in the nation also. I mean, not only with George Floyd, but with Stephon Clark, with Sean Bell, with Ahmaud Arbery, you know, another black man that was killed right before George Floyd and was actually, kicked off of a lot of those Black Lives Matter protests before that happened. So the killing of Breonna Taylor and so many others. I mean, the list just goes on. And it's like, that's why right now people are looking at this trial as being more so a trial of our American justice system, to see if they'll actually green light an officer killing a person, you know, whether they were guilty or not, in cold blood, in broad daylight, in front of all to see, and us feeling helpless in doing anything about it. So either we're going to have a justice system that makes sure that the people that are taking the oath to uphold the law abide by those same laws, or they're going to be given a pass and a license to kill. And that's happened time and time again. I'm not expecting anything different from this trial, believe it or not. And I don't think many people in America are either, which is why we're mainly preparing for the response to that.
Mate, look, I've been watching as much as I can with it all going on, and I as a theory or a working theory, I've got far less respect for corrupt police than corrupt citizens. Police take taxpayer dollars to live their lives, and to do that, they do it accepting certain roles and responsibilities. Exactly. Whereas some guy who's out selling pot on the corner, which is still mostly illegal in Australia. So, I mean, obviously selling whatever, you know.
Welcome to
that's on my list of things to try and overthrow and sort out as well. But you know what I mean? At least if you're just a citizen who's decided to undertake an illegal activity, you haven't committed to upholding any necessary laws or oaths, and you're not taking taxpayer dollars. As long as you know what I mean, like that. To me, there's a big difference, and people don't always see that. If you're a state official, a policeman, a politician, or whatever, you are serving the public. You've put your hand up to serve the public, and you're living off their dollar. Therefore, no, you can't be corrupt, and no, you can't go around killing people, and no, you can't just make up the rules to suit yourself. You've got to conform to what you've chosen to participate in, I suppose, as a role in life.
Well, they have a job. It isn't our job to be going around acting as if we need to behave a certain way and be model citizens and, you know, conduct ourselves in a certain manner. They are, you know, the public officials, the ones that are being held to a higher standard and are being paid by, like you said, the taxpayers, to be that example for the rest of the community, to say, this is how things should be done. I'll be that role model and follow in my footsteps, basically. Look at what's going on with our politicians and our law enforcement system and law officials in general. Nobody wants to behave like them. If anything, they're acting more authoritarian than an American government is ever supposed to behave. And we're sitting back allowing it to happen simply because we're being compliant. You know, we are threatened with the rule of law, with force, you know, whether it be physical force or financial force or some type of disciplinary act by this law system that again demands that we, the people, the average person, behave a certain way. We all can conduct ourselves in a civil, peaceful manner. We do that naturally as human beings, or else there will be complete chaos, you know, in every society all across the world. But we're not like that. You know, human nature, we're loving, peaceful, caring beings, you know, and we live our lives accordingly. And that isn't happening because we have people in government telling us that that's how we need to live, you know. It's
That's
ridiculous.
it. I don't know one person in politics who I would trust to rule over my life and manage my life better than what I will in a way that suits me.
Exactly.
And I'm sure you don't either. And you probably know quite a lot of people in politics, as do I, at various levels. And some of them are great people. Some of them are fine, but I still wouldn't say to them, "Oh, here's my life. You run it and you tell me what I should be doing and how I should be doing it because you're so much better at it than me."
Exactly.
You've got this clown behind you in your poster, man. Now, I've seen some of your videos, but for the guys who haven't quite crossed over from checking out a little bit of Resolute TV here and moved over into checking out the Black Side of Liberty with Governor Wildstar, mate, what charges have you been throwing at this guy? So I know you've been attacking him pretty hard, but what are your main gripes with Gruesome Newsom? What's he been doing to piss you off?
Well, he's a job killer, you know. That's my biggest gripe is at a time when our nation needs to be at work, you know, going out there, providing a living for ourselves as individuals. We're being told that a certain group of people is essential while another group of people is considered non-essential. So my livelihood, me taking care of myself, my family, my children, you know, isn't important to him. And basically, before this lockdown, he has changed laws that prevented people from working, you know, independently. And America is the land of opportunity. When you rob people of having a chance to gain entrepreneurship, to build a business, then you're preventing them from having all of those opportunities that this land is supposed to afford them. This again was before the lockdown. Before the lockdown, he also raised taxes on the people of California. He passed multiple laws preventing us from being able to obtain weapons, whether it be, you know, a gun or a collapsible baton. You know, so many restrictive laws to prevent us from being able to protect ourselves. And when it comes to you being able to exercise your natural right to defend yourself and, you know, purchase anything that you need, any tool for self-defense, there should not again be any restrictions to that according to our United States Constitution. Again, we have dictators like him who believe otherwise. So those are some of my biggest gripes with him. Not to mention just being one of those type of elitists that think they know better than the rest of us and want to impose on us certain rules that they themselves don't abide by. For instance, many of the restaurants here in the state of California, actually during that time, the majority of restaurants in the state of California weren't allowing indoor dining. He was caught indoors eating at some fancy 5-star restaurant, you know, where it's like
laundry.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
Remember the Freedom Chef happening here? I've actually got Thomas Keller's book up on the wall there. I mean, that's an excellent restaurant. And there's you know, the work that guy does in hospitality has been brilliant. But clearly, he too has ascended to the world where you can hang out with the governor and do whatever bullshit you want to do. So
exactly. Yeah, and I mean, he's eating indoors, not wearing a mask, not socially distancing. But again, not allowing we the people to enjoy those same liberties, and even fining and shutting down other businesses that decided to exercise that same freedom. It's just absurd that they again feel like they are above the law. And it's like the rules for thee, but not for me. And when you have hypocrites in office saying that they are able to live a certain way, but we must live according to the way that they dictate, then we have a problem. We're not living as free people, and we're not living in a constitutional republic where we have representatives, you know, in office representing us. You know, they're representing themselves and their special interest groups and whoever else is keeping them in power.
Yeah. And look, and I've put it out, I don't actually care if politicians are purchased, but I do think if you are going to be purchased, you should be flying the flag of which companies own you. So if you're owned by Big Pharma, make sure you got it on your jacket so at least the people know who's paying your bills, so we can decide whether you're acceptable or not.
Right. That's why I'm
like
by the people. You know?
Yeah, that's right. If you are purchased, or you do have vested interests, or other interests outside of the people, we should know about it before we have to vote for you. Now, you guys have optional voting in Australia. In the US. In Australia, we have compulsory voting. So if we don't vote, we get a fine. We're sort of expected to vote, and that's at all levels. So from federal to our local councils to our state, regionals, all the different. So we sometimes have to vote 2 or 3 times a year for all sorts of different nonsense and all sorts of different corrupt politicians. How's your campaign going, mate? Like, how are you finding it? You're getting some traction? If Newsom's recalled, what are your chances of getting elected, mate?
Oh yeah, I'm getting great traction out here. I mean, I'm one of the leading candidates mainly because of my involvement in the recall process. Because it is bringing a lot of attention to the people involved, the volunteers, the organizers of the recall, etc. It's bringing a lot of attention to the effort to again remove him from power, and I played an instrumental role in that. So that again catapults me to the forefront. I was also the 2018 Libertarian candidate for California governor. So that's gained me a lot of traction as well. I still have many supporters from the Libertarian Party, as well as registered Libertarian voters that are supportive of me. I'm very well known in the Occupy Anonymous circles. I got those people behind me. The secessionist movement, Cal Exit. I'm actually a Cal Exit Congress member for Yes California. So out here in California, we're actually pushing to secede from the United States of America and create an independent state of California. We are afforded that liberty through way of our own declaration. And we again are pushing to provide more people information as to why this would be beneficial. We're a major donor state to federal funded programs and, federal regulation and policies that prevent us from exercising our freedoms here in the state are extremely, discriminatory. So we want to fight against that in every way, shape, and form. So declaring our independence will help combat that. And like I said, I got a lot of those people behind my run for governor as well, because if I do get elected, they know that I'm on their side, and I'll, of course, make sure that California stands out above the rest.
Mate, that's awesome. And look, I again vote one Governor Wildstar if you're in Cali.
Yeah.
My man, look, as you pointed out there, you're not actually a member of the Libertarian Party. You're running as a Republican. Is that still correct?
Yes, correct. I'm a Ron Paul Republican, not a red hat Trump Republican.
It doesn't get much better as a mentor than Ron Paul in libertarian and freedom circles. That's for sure. He's right up there, mate. But I did see recently you had a bit of an issue with some of the libertarian guys, or certainly one in particular. That looked like it got pretty.
You mean Chuck Ham of the Libertarian Party of California. So my issue and gripe with this guy is, libertarians are supposed to be against victimless crimes. And what happened in my case was a victimless crime. It was a nonviolent crime, but not only that, but there was no victim. There was no loss of property, any loss of money, any loss of life. So because libertarians adamantly feel as if any application of laws that where there is no victim should not be on the books for the record. They need to be repealed. They need to be nullified, and we should be doing everything in our power to fight against them. And Spike Cohen agrees on that. He was the Libertarian vice presidential candidate, and he actually kickstarted bringing attention to what was happening to me by sending out a tweet and saying, Wildstar was just arrested and, or sentenced and is on trial for this nonsense. And Angela McArdle of the Libertarian Party of Los Angeles, she actually started a campaign to write letters to the judge and district attorney requesting leniency. And as admirable as that was of her, and she was able to inspire people like Spike Cohen to send a letter, she also got people like this Chuck Ham guy who felt like he needed to take it upon himself to contact the judge and request that I not be given any leniency and that I basically be sent to jail and prosecuted by the law since I had violated their rules, even though they weren't constitutional. And again, even though there wasn't any victim, he felt as if I needed to be disciplined by the law, which is, to me, reflective of a lot of the sentiment of white America. Now you have white America, the majority, and then you have white America, the minority. Okay. So the white America majority are people that think like Chuck Ham, that think that the system needs to be disciplinary in making sure that we behave a certain way, especially black people,
I've heard stories about you guys. I mean, honestly.
You can look at American history and that'll prove it to itself. As a matter of fact, I'll drop this little gem. Police departments and police, job in general came about as slave patrols. That's the origin of police in America. Slave patrollers, and they're no different to this day, to where, again, the system can be used to target black people and treat them differently than white people. And you'll see it again with the Derek Chauvin trial. Even though, he's the one on trial, they're trying to make it seem like George Floyd was a druggie and that he deserved to die. That's ridiculous and disgusting that this language is even acceptable looking at this nation's history with slavery. But again, this Chuck Ham, going back to him, is resemblance of that same type of mindset. And I know him personally because I was in the Libertarian Party of California, and he actually, I met him. He actually helped me gain more exposure to my libertarian campaign for governor. So it was a bit of a slap in the face, and a stab in the back that he would do such a thing. And I basically just called him out on it. I said, hey, is this you? I contacted him personally, and he responded back saying basically, yes, you need to stay in your place and know the law instead of breaking the law. And even though, again, the law that stands says I have the right to record in court, they were imposing on me a court rule. Rules are not laws. I can have a rule that says when you come in my house, you better take off your shoes. That ain't the law. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's right.
Right. And this is a public place. So for it to be a public place, you can't just have arbitrary rules. There has to be a law of conduct for the public place. Like when you go to a public park, it has all sorts of rules. Don't litter. Don't, throw stuff in the water. Don't feed the ducks, and they have laws that say rules. You break those laws, probably going to be fined for it or dragged off to jail. And that's exactly what happened with this court case. It wasn't a law that I had broke. It was simply just a court order, a court rule. It was ridiculous. So there was a bit of blowback there because this guy in particular, He is an executive officer of the Libertarian Party of California. It wouldn't be any big problem if he was just a Libertarian Party member, but you're a representative of the party. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
On the official level. So either the Libertarian Party agrees with what he says by not removing him from that position, or they do stand by him. And so far, he hasn't been removed from his position. There has been no official response from the Libertarian Party of California. And that's why, again, I'm choosing to disassociate myself from them versus the members of the party, which I've gotten tremendous support from, including, like I said, Angela McCardle, who is the chair of the Libertarian Party of Los Angeles.
Mate, I imagine, and I'm glad at least some of the Libertarian folk are wise enough to still support you. I imagine the Libertarian Party of the United States and each state within the United States is very similar to our Libertarian Party over here. We call ourselves the Liberal Democrats, complete opposite to what the British version is. All these names don't really mean all that much in 2021 anyway. But our Libertarian Party, mate, has a lot of the same. It's infighting, and everybody's always bickering and arguing over fucking trivial nonsense.
Right.
You know, I don't know why they can't get their shit together, really. Like, part of being libertarian is accepting that people are going to have differences with you. That's kind of the whole gig. And we've been in the middle of an absolute shitstorm here with our party. We've got our annual conference coming up, and I think it's our 20-something year anniversary as an official party. It's all happening, you know. So I'd like to see our party unite on a far more pragmatic front. And I imagine the Libertarian Party in America, if they could unite and be far more pragmatic, you would have your Ron Paul Republicans, your Nicholas Wildstar Republicans, probably more likely to unite under that banner, I guess. The problem with the Republican is you've always got to answer the question is why you're running as a Republican. So you get your fringe guys, Libertarians, going, well, you're obviously a statist. And then you've got your other guys going, well, no, he's trying to get elected. You can't make a difference if you don't get elected. Or,
exactly.
You know, or you can make a difference if you don't get elected, but it's sort of for you wanting to be elected. That's a key. As well, I
want to get elected. You know, I'd like to improve, you know, the possibilities of that as much as possible. And I found out how running as a libertarian is advantageous for me. It did help me gain more name recognition. It did not help me get on a larger debate stage and appeal to the masses, as well as, you know, shake that notion that a third party candidate won't have a shot at winning. Now I'm more convincing. Now people are taking my campaign more seriously and are investing that vote into me more heavily. And that's what I want. As long as I can be a man of principle and stand on my word and stand for the value of libertarianism and how it would benefit the people, then that's all that matters. And I thank people like Angela and Spike for recognizing that in me, as well as Dan Berman. He stepped up to the plate. Dan, taxation is theft. Berman, you know.
What a top guy. I've got to get him back as well soon. I've actually, we were talking quite a bit for a while when he did the taxation is theft fest, and you know, we were talking quite a lot around that sort of period. And you know what it's like. Sometimes you talk a lot with somebody and then you sort of go off this way. He's running campaigns. I'm getting ready to start some new campaigning down this way. We've got a heap of elections coming up. So we're chasing candidates, vetting candidates. I'm working on my own profile to sort of rattle as many cages as possible. We've got a little local mayoral campaign that we're sort of driving here as well. And guys like Dan and Spike's been epic since the presidential election. I mean, Joe Jorgensen seems to have fallen off the planet a little bit and gone a bit quiet. Spike's actually just gone ballistic, and it's really good to see because he's very well spoken. He's smart. He's smart as a whip, to be fair, and he's very, very libertarian. He lives his values, which is really great to see. And I think he's going to do an excellent job. I presume he's positioning himself for a presidential run.
I think probably he'll run for that VP spot again and lock that in, which will definitely happen. You know, there are a few other candidates that probably would be challenging for him to topple for that presidential spot. like Justin Amash. He was a former congressman. He's joined the Libertarian Party, and I think they're priming him to run again in 2022 as a presidential candidate, this time for the Libertarian Party, since when he ran against Trump, he was running as a Republican.
Yeah.
So there are many libertarian minded Republicans out in California or out in America in general. Another candidate that may step up to the plate is, Jo Jorgensen. She may give it another go, as well as Larry Sharp, former gubernatorial candidate out of New York, and a few others.
Larry's brilliant. We've had him on this program, and he's a clever guy.
Indeed, yes.
Very intelligent man, and I like to bounce off you guys because different as our systems are. My English is terrible this morning. As different as our systems are, there's a lot we can learn from each other. What works and what fails, and what does what does good and what does bad within campaigning, within strategies, within finding candidates. And if we can all share that knowledge and the lessons learned, we've got a better chance of helping push for a freer society. So I absolutely love Larry Sharp. I try to watch The Sharp Way at least once or twice a week. I mean, he does an awful lot of podcasting and promoting at the moment. And I obviously, like yourself, we can't watch all of each other's programs every week. We'd all just be glued to YouTube. We wouldn't get anything done, So I try to support everybody where I can and watch where I can. And, I'm always, if I see you guys doing something, I do a like and a share. And if I can wake a few more people up to it, well, then that's great as well. Mate, I'm really hopeful that you get elected. I think that would be phenomenal. I'm really, really happy that you're not going to jail for 6 years for fucking videoing yourself. The thing, when it was all happening and your wife was public, and you and I never spoke about it, but I sort of just reached out to her and said, look, there's not much I can do from Australia, mate, but Nick's been absolutely great to work with, and I really hope, if there's any way I can help, I can help. Because she was stood real tall while you were in that little jam, mate. I was like, look at this. This lady is stepping up. It was mate.
Yeah, she's my backbone. I mean, she's the rock to the Wildstar family. So I'm very thankful for her for the amount of strength she provides to me and herself. And like I said, she's the one that keeps everything together. So thank you for reaching out to her and offering to assist her and in all of this also, because it's been difficult for all of us, and of course for her having to be threatened with being a single mom while her husband is in jail and having to deal with the toddler on her own was a possibility she had to take into account, but thankfully that did not happen. I'm still here, I'm still free, and still fighting the good fight for we the people.
Mate, and look, and that's it, and that's one of the areas, I guess, in this political fight that we're all looking at is we are all, any of us that do this publicly, be it running as a candidate, doing YouTube-y type stuff, whatever the case may be. A few people said to me, "Oh, you should really polish it," and I'm like, "Well, everybody else does it. I'll keep mine fairly raw if you don't mind, and if you don't like it, you don't like it." But the other side is I don't have the technical skills to make it very, very polished, like I just have very basic skills, but I think the message and the reaching out to you guys is massively important, and that's why I like to do it. But there is a big target on your back. And when I saw your trial, and look, and there's one on mine over here in Australia as well, because I go fairly hard at our version of a Republican and a Democrat party. We've got the Liberal Party and the Labor Party, because everything is none of it makes sense, but I go hard at them, and I know that there's quite a lot of them in there would love to shut me up. And our other guest this week that's featured with yourself is a lady named Andrea Tokaji. She was actually kicked out of our Conservative Party over here just before the most recent elections, right before they whitewashed. They were absolutely obliterated. They're not even a two-party system in that state anymore. We've actually got states now that are almost one-party states. That's how totalitarian it's starting to shape up over here. It's getting really, really scary, mate. Yeah. They're getting across the line.
Here, I mean, we have a Democratic majority ruled state by way of the governor and our legislative body. Pretty much the majority of them are Democrats. The majority of our judicial system, justices are Democrats. So, I completely agree with you as far as the totalitarian control. And it does take us combining our efforts, all across the world to kind of get this liberty movement going, because that's really what this is all about, is fighting for our freedom, period. And we're challenging the establishment. We're threatening them, the superpowers that be, whether it be on the right or on the left, and all of these other labels that they want to call themselves. They present themselves as being people of the community. We, the people, the public. They are not. They're the people that sit in their ivory castles that, were raised with the silver spoon in their mouth and think they know better than us. And so they try to relate by sitting down and having beers and going out and playing pool and, try to make it seem like they're one of us, that like they're a commoner, when really not. They're an elitist, they're an oligarch, they're an autocrat, they're an all of the above that we, the people, do not need representing us. And that's why it is important for us to unite our efforts, because anything that I can do here in California, I'm pretty sure will help influence others there in Australia to do the same, and vice versa. I call myself Governor Wildstar because I govern my damn self. Like you said, I don't need a governor to tell me how to live my life. I think I'm good at living my life the best way possible, because I look at my life and it's great, and I know it could be better. And everything I do in my life to make it better is going to make those changes. It's not going to be because some government official or some law enforcement officer or whatever the case may be. It's going to be because I, as an individual, am choosing to make my life better. And by doing so, I'm also going to make others' lives better. And that's how we should be conducting ourselves as individuals. Be responsible for yourself and your actions. Stop being a baby. Grow up. You know what I'm saying? Because we got a whole bunch of grown-ass kids
babies
here. Act like they still need to be told what to do by mommy and daddy. Still need to have their bills paid by mommy and daddy. Hell no, man. I've been out on my own since I was a teenager. So I'll be damned if another grown man is going to come along and tell me they know better for me than I know myself. We're going to have a conflict of interest there. And if you don't think there's something wrong with that, just ideally and fundamentally, that we as individuals should be able to think for ourselves, then you are definitely thinking like a supremacist.
And welcome back to Resolute TV, episode 4 of series 3. We've been having this puts us in 24 episodes overall, not including the paradigm shifts and all the fun ones we've been doing on the outside. So it's a pretty cool little program we've got going on here. We kind of like the results we're getting, which is ideal for us. And we're getting some really great quality guests and some great quality content. We've got a return guest, Miss Andrea Tokaji, who is a representative, or has attempted to run an election representative in the socialist state of Western Australia, or is it the communist state of Western Australia? Mate, how are you, Andrea? Thanks for coming back and joining me again. It's a delight to talk to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Mate, I did notice you did get your 4%, which for people in political circles understand that is a boost. That does help. It is a valuable achievement, but obviously you didn't win the seat. How do you reckon it all went? What would you like to say? A bit of an update.
Look, at the end of the day, Dean, what we had in Western Australia was the media that was owned by the Labor Party was spruiking propaganda left, right and centre. They portrayed Mark McGowan literally as their saviour during the COVID pandemic. And you know what? It was due to our geography, due to the fact that we're the most isolated city in the world, that COVID didn't quite hit here. We had zero cases of community transmission. Regardless of that fact, Mark McGowan still had us in lockdown, still enacted the emergency powers. I don't know how he justified that. because legally every 2 years you need to, every 2 weeks under the emergency powers, you need to justify the reason as to why you're extending those emergency powers for another 2 weeks. And so in this instant, when there's no COVID, zero, traces of it in the community, how did he justify that? So it's been a really interesting campaign. And of course, the whole election was COVID focused.
Isn't it terrifying? I mean, really, if you scare people enough, you can convince them of just about anything. And look, and that's been throughout history. That's nothing new. We used to use religion as a fear, like the gods and the ancient gods will come down on you. And then it turned into God himself will come down on you. And that became a thing. And then it was your teachers. And then it was your parents. There's always somebody about to come down on you and hold you accountable and scare the piss out of you. And now it's global warming. And you and we discussed last time the whole 5G tower thing, which, I'm not going to stitch you up on it for looking into that. It's a reasonable thing to look into.
There have been many cases in front of the UK courts, in front of the Supreme Courts here in Australia, where judges themselves in our judicial system have said the adverse effects on our health is so bad in relation to this new technology that they banned the 5G towers from going up. There is a barrister in Tasmania at the Michael Kirby Chambers, and he is taking on hundreds of these cases, and he's winning every time. So it's a reality that our justice system has acknowledged that fact.
Well, I mean, again, but it's just more fear-driven bullshit as far as I'm concerned. 9/11 was a good one. Port Arthur was a good one. The recent shootings, and we certainly don't endorse any of that sort of, obviously we don't endorse violence against anybody, but it's just amazing that this world of constant fear we're all living in. I've got an 8-year-old who was wanting to wear a COVID mask here a few weeks ago, and I said, "Why do you want to wear a COVID mask?" "Oh, so I don't get COVID. Everybody's scared, and I don't want to get it." And I said, "Mate, I don't think you need to worry about it. We need to worry just as much about a shark coming in through the front window as we do about you getting COVID, mate. Don't even worry about it. Take a deep breath. It's fine. There's nothing to be scared of." But we scare the piss out of our kids with COVID. We scare the piss out, and our adults. We scare the piss out of them with climate change. We're scaring the piss out of them with all sorts of things, which is creating this little people-type society, which I for one, I'd rather people did their own homework, thought about it a little bit. The world's been going to end of climate change now for the last 300 years, missing the point that the planet's, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years old. The world's going to end. Climate change, the last 100 years, the temperature's gone up. Hang on a minute, we had an ice age. We had all sorts of things go on. And these poor lunatics are trying to scare people over 100 years worth of data. I think they need to get a slightly bigger perspective on what goes on in the world. They're not that important.
And that's the greatest disappointment and sadness for me in this election. Critical thinking has gone out the window. People just don't do their own research anymore. They don't think for themselves. In fact, they buy into propaganda so easily because part of it is laziness in the culture of Australia, complacency as well. But, this underlying trust in government, refugee kid from a communist dictatorship regime, we grew up not trusting government naturally. And I think we need to have a healthy suspicion around policy, around, agendas, particularly when it comes to economic agendas, and to question things. That's why I questioned things in the article for which I was disendorsed, and of course then went on and ran as an independent because I wanted to finish the race. But what we've got here now in Western Australia is actually the death of democracy itself. So our Premier, who was re-elected, Mark McGowan, leader of the Labor Party, has now instituted himself as the Treasurer.
I saw that.
Can you imagine that? A man so capable.
I did read an article the other day. He's thinking about renaming himself Grand Lord Chancellor of WA. Is that true?
So that is indicative of how Machiavellian we have leadership here in Western Australia. The power's totally gone to his head. He has forgotten that we have a representative democracy here in Australia. That means that the people elect him. The people are his boss, and he's there to serve the people. He's totally forgotten that. And in fact, he's so self-indulgent that he believes he can not only do the Premier's job, he can do the Treasurer's job at the same time. Where is the transparency? Where is the accountability? Who's he going to be reporting to? We have a scary 4 years ahead of us in Western Australia.
Mate, well and truly. And look, I take the piss out of it. I'm waiting for him to show up in a Darth Vader costume or something, you know, like, because they're just the power hungry is good. It's just phenomenal. What you're telling me, you don't have anybody in your cabinet, Mr. McGowan, capable of being a treasurer at the same time, or you know, it's just unfathomable to think that power can become so concentrated in this country. I'm not even a massive fan of democracy in and of itself, because essentially it means my gang's bigger than your gang, therefore we rule over you. But to take it to this next level where, I mean, it's a borderline dictatorship. Next thing he'll be the minister for this and the minister for that. How many more portfolios does he want to take control of? It's unbelievable. And the fact that the people are actually still cheering and endorsing it shows just what a scary time 2021 through to is going to be.
Yeah, and look, the people of Western Australia have elected a dictatorship. There is no doubt about it. We have 53 members of the Labor Party in the lower house ruling, right? And we've got about 2 Liberals and 4 Nationals. And in total, how is that 7 going to be a strong opposition to the force of the Labor machine when it comes to debating public policy and law, when it comes to putting any amendments or suggestions forward? Is there any point in holding Parliament anymore? Because what we've elected is actually a dictatorship.
You have, certainly. And look, and I've got to be fair, there's a little part of my brain from a tactics perspective, and I had this out when I did the Ian Monero election, and a few people were really mad at me for putting the Liberal Party lower than the Labor Party. But to be fair, at least the Labor Party are fairly loud and proud communists. They come out and say, we want socialism, we want this. So you know what you're fighting. With the Liberal Party, and you'd be a fair example of this, they haven't stood for anything legitimate or consistent or really certainly not what Menzies envisioned, best I can tell, for 10, 15 years. And even then it was still debatable. And I keep hearing people say, fix it from the inside. I'm more of the persuasion that, look, the Liberal Party's dead in the water. Let's just burn it down, burn down the coalitions as it was, and look at rebuilding something smarter, better, principled, that actually is going to hold some sort of validation. And it's not left versus right. This is 2020 is long beyond that. What we have now is we have people who care about freedom and liberty, and people who care about totalitarian.
Absolutely. Here.
But, you know, there are areas where you and I may differ on certain policies, and there are areas where I may differ with many, many people, as would you. But the core element is, do you appreciate freedom? Yeah. Or do you want this false safe security of, it's a false slavery, really.
Yeah, that's right.
I'd rather see the Liberal Party just accept it. The fact that most of their members are pretty well socialists anyway, go and join the Labor Party, go and get in their gang, put up a really big gang, and then we form a smaller resistance that's focused and actually has some principles. That's probably how I'd be inclined to.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I was of the view to change things from the inside. And I campaigned for the Liberal Party for 14 years. You know, I ran as a candidate for the first time in 2008 in Canberra. And since then, my campaign experience has been in Canberra predominantly, both territory and federal level. And of course, Canberra is a very unique, beast for campaigning and politics. And I'd say, you know, it's the toughest jurisdiction in Australia in a lot of senses. And so I felt like that was my training ground. And when I came over to Perth, I was surprised at how relaxed everyone was about campaigning, because Canberra's so vicious. But you know what? I came over here thinking that the Liberals in Western Australia were the last bastion of true conservatism. And boy, was I surprised to find that the left has overtaken the Liberal Party here as well. They are the ones that pushed Zach Kirkup forward. They are the ones that blamed the Conservatives in the party for the loss of the election. Can you believe it? When it's the left who put forward these policy motions that were greener than the Greens, you know, and they don't admit to themselves that they've lost their way totally, and they've lost the essence of their not only political identity but morals and values, for crying out loud. They don't know what they stand for anymore.
They don't stand for anything anymore. And to be fair,
they're a dead party for sure.
Last time that Zach Kirkup disendorsing you, and then 3 weeks later coming out and essentially seceding the election with no fight, no ticker, no heart, not a thing. The guy is spineless, and the Liberal Party chose him to be their leader. They can't turn around. They disendorsed you, who certainly, whether people agree with everything you say or don't agree with, courage is certainly something you're not lacking. Now, people might go, well, 5G, conspiracy, rah, rah, rah. That's fine, but courage you're not lacking. And this guy was the guy they picked to be the leader, who disendorsed you with his other buddies, couldn't get a fucking vote, to be perfectly honest, and couldn't buy one, and then seceded the election before it started. Australia loves an underdog, but they don't love somebody who punks out before the fight started. We like an underdog boxer or an underdog sporting team, and if they get up, great. Stephen Bradbury, fantastic. But he was in the fight. This guy...
That's right.
Pulled the pin 3 weeks out. It's one of the most embarrassing things I've ever seen. And a few people say, oh, it's a tactic, it's a strategy. Strategy, my ass. It was absolute cop-out and showed a complete lack of spine, which is what I've been very critical of the Liberal Party for many years, is just having no backbone whatsoever. And look, our guys over in the WA elections, the Liberal Democrats, who I'm still a member of the party, and I'm not on any executive positions really. I help out with the branch development and run as a candidate on occasion. I didn't necessarily agree with our strategy, because in a lot of ways we sort of were hoping to piggyback off the Liberal Party, it seems. That was, and I wasn't involved in the strategy discussion, so I don't really know. I can only go by looking at the way the campaign unfolded. And I thought, if ever there was a we don't want to ride off, it's the bloody Liberal Party, because they are not what we stand for, and they're not what we're about. Maybe there was a natural alignment many years ago, but there's not anymore. The Liberal Party is completely spineless. Let's clump all the socialists together. Let's just put them in where they are. We'll just call it the National Socialist Party of Australia. I think that'll work out all right. And the rest of us can go, right, let's get a club going here, and we'll start fighting back. We'll start from smaller scale. We'll start with less soldiers and less warriors, but I'd rather be in a battle next to somebody like yourself who has some conviction, even on the areas we disagree with, than all these spineless, useless pieces of crap that are running around now in Parliament carrying on. You know? Yeah,
and unfortunately, I think that was part of the demise of this election. So there was no strong alternative. You had an opposition leader who gave up well before the fight was over. And you had all these minor parties squabbling. And unfortunately, the Lib Dems over here did not even have a presence, I've got to say. They didn't make themselves known enough. And particularly in, my electorate and its boundaries, the candidates weren't out and about. They weren't seen. Even on polling days, we had, because of COVID, 2.5 weeks of pre-polls, which is unheard of. So we had essentially 15 days of election days. We had things like pencils. People voted with pencils. They had to have their own pencils because of COVID. Now I have real problems with that. Anyone can manipulate that piece of paper and rub that out. And of course, we had this situation where a lot of the minor parties were taking a lot of the percentages that could have gone to a collect few. So one of the problems we have, of course, is negotiations when it comes to preferences. We do live in a preferential system. Preferences work well when they're set up well. But unfortunately, here in Western Australia, what happened is minor preferences were distributed so broadly that they had no effect. And so we need to clean up our act as minor parties. I strongly feel that, you know, the independents and minors can get together of the same mind and try and form a coalition somehow and try and form an opposition, because the people are crying out for an alternative.
Man, I've been arguing quite a lot recently. Liberal Democrats, you know, and I love most of the party members and whatever, and I get along fairly well with most of them. But we've had our internal struggles, as every party does. Let's be realistic. And some people, oh, well, I saw this about Pauline, whatever. Right? He said, she said, you might as well be in high school. But I've dubbed it the 20%, right? And it's the 20% of differences between you and myself policy-wise that all of a sudden mean that we have to be in a completely different party and completely at war with each other over the 20%. And then it's the same when Mark Latham was a member of the Liberal Democrats. I probably pegged him on about 20% where he really wasn't in line with us. But the rest of it he pretty much did. And then you look at other parties and other independents. Ricardo Bosi, who I saw you did a thing with Joel Jamal the other night, or sorry, there was an interview with Joel Jamal that made the news yesterday in WA. Joel and Ricardo used to work very closely together. And Ricardo and I get along really, really well. We've done interviews like this before. We went in the Monero again. And our policy differences, that 20%. And instead of us all being on the same page, now Ricardo nominated me as his number 2 as far as references, and I did the same, of course. But you look at it, and you look at Shooters and Fishers, and you look at all these minor parties. You could form a really, really strong coalition if you could just get all these egomaniacs, and there's an awful lot of ego in politics. We've got to.
Yes, there is.
That's why they're there, like it or not. But if you could put all those guys in a room and say, right, we've got 20% differences in all of our policies. Which are the 10 key policies can we form a coalition of? These are the 10 we drive, and we stick it fair up the Liberal, Labor, Greens, Nationals, Socialist Party, because they're all one party as far as I can tell. There's not enough difference between them. But you could form a really strong coalition. You've got all those guys on the same page. I think most of Australia would, or certainly enough to make it viable, would step in and support something like that.
Yeah, and look, I think the appetite is right. Internationally, we have a disruption in democratic nations where there is a threat of dictatorships. I was just listening to Joe Biden's first press conference this morning, and he was reiterating his very close relationship with Xi Jinping. So he has, a relationship with China that is quite unusual for a democratic state. Where is that going to go in his term? And so we have a real threat in our region, particularly. We are allies with America, but what does his relationship with China mean for that alliance? And of course, China is knocking on the back door of Australia's, territory to claim it as theirs, both politically and militarily. So we need to get our act together in our own house. We need to clean up our own house because there are bigger wars we need to fight. And I think Australians need a backbone. It's now more than ever so important that the common everyday Aussie gets up and thinks about their politics and engages with their democracy. It's up to the people to hold the government to account. It's up to the people to lobby and advocate and put ideas forward and engage with the process and make sure that it retains its democratic, free, foundations. Because if we don't, unfortunately, Parliament's not going to do it for us.
Oh, look, there's no way in the world they're going to do it for us. People, again, I get shit all the time. Oh, you're so critical of all these politicians, and they're just doing their best. No, they're not. Not even close. They're living off taxpayer, and they're gorging themselves, and they're selling themselves to the highest bidders. And it doesn't matter which certainly the major parties. I think there are some independents far more well-meaning and far more principled in their values, of course. But as far as the big parties go, it's just about maintaining power. And the Labor Party don't care if the Liberal Party's in power, and vice versa, as much, as long as one of those two is ruling the room. oh, well, we'll be opposition. We still get our 200 grand a year. We still get it, whatever we want. We're all cool. Everything's sweet. It's only all the other ones that are sitting on the outliers that they don't want. There's no doubt about it that they don't want anybody from the Liberal Democrats being Prime Minister. Let's be fair. They would shit bricks. Anybody from One Nation. And I'm not a One Nation guy. There's some policies I like and some I don't. And you know, I'm friends with some. That's great. But, yeah, you sort of look at it and you go, they do not want any of these minor parties getting any traction. And both of them will work together to collapse the small parties, the independents and the more free-thinking groups in the name of controlling it for the big two. As long as the big two are there, and by default, the Greens and the Nats. You know, the Greens are just a little puppy of the Labor Party, and the Nats are just the Liberal Party. We all know that. It's a scary time, Andrea. It's a scary time. What are we going to do about it?
Well, it's also an exciting time because it means that we can write our own future. What I'm scared of is that people don't appreciate what that means. So in my dealings with politicians over the last 14 years, I've realized how little they understand about political ideology, the law, parliamentary process. A lot of them don't actually understand all of that. And to be fair, the common person doesn't really understand a lot of that either, right?
The common person has no idea and doesn't want to know. Let's be fair.
And it's not really taught in our schools anymore either. So part of this journey, I believe, is about education, right? Educating ourselves and educating each other about parliamentary process, what is true democracy, what are the threats to our freedoms and rights. And look, one of the major threats that we have here in Western Australia is a horrendous law under the Public Health Act, Section 158, that allows an authorised person to restrain, to detain, and to force them to have the vaccine. So that authorised person could be anyone. It could be a police officer, it could be a nurse or a doctor, or it could be any public servant, right? And so it's
public servants. Apparently, a lot of them do masturbate in the Parliament House there. They're masturbating in Parliament, but they can come up and force you to be vaccinated. I don't want you injecting me with anything. Nothing that you're jerking off in Parliament, nor anything in an injection or a syringe. Thank you very much.
So under the guise of COVID, we've got, this human right violation to our bodily autonomy threatened at the moment. I think globally, but with this poor legislation that was written. You know, the legislation goes on to say that you can be stripped, including your underwear, by this authorised person and forced to take this vaccine. So what about children in this scenario? What about the elderly? What about the disabled and most vulnerable in our society? So I've got real problems with a lot of the legislation that's been enacted, not only under these emergency powers, but even before. This legislation was written in 2016, right? So there's a lot of bad legislation that needs to be repealed, needs to be amended, needs to be struck from the records. But in doing so, we also need to go back to basics. We need to start making sure that our health system, our education system, our judicial systems are working well. Because, we've all got caught up in this hyperactivity of fringe issues, right? And we've let the basics in our society slip. And that's not okay. It's like running a household. You need to do the basics. Get food on the table, clean the house, keep things in order, pay the bills, right? Instead of focusing on the frilly stuff, renovating and doing the gardening and things like that. We need to get the basics right in our house. We need to get our house in order.
Yeah. I mean, I've slightly modified that now. I'm doing gardening because I don't want to be supporting the major corporations for my food sources. And I've been getting a lot of water tanks and things put on. No doubt will be banned at some stage soon. The councils will come along and go, you can't collect your own water. But we'll have...
Yeah, they've already done that in New Zealand, actually.
There's actually some county in America, I think, that it's illegal to plant vegetables on your lawn. Your front lawn is only allowed to have certain plants, and they are not allowed to be, you can't grow vegetables and crops on your front lawn. that's outrageous because, well, I don't know. I don't even know how they come up with justification for any of this shit.
Exactly.
And does it not now? And again, some people call me a conspiracy theorist, but I generally just look at stuff and go, well, that seems pretty shonky. If they enacted this legislation in 2016 regarding body autonomy, hang on a minute, COVID didn't happen until 2020. They know something we didn't know.
Great question.
Or are they just preempting stuff, or what's the story? What are your thoughts? I think it seems pretty dodgy. A bit like some of those videos with Bill Gates getting around where they've planned for all this shit, then it happens 10 minutes later, and you just come on, guys. Could you be any more blatant? And is it a conspiracy if it's a reality?
Yeah, look, I think, of course, there's oopsies in life, there's accidents, human error. But when we look at the evidence, when we look at the source, we look at the timelines, there's premeditation involved. There is a bigger agenda at play here globally. And you know what? The poor are getting poorer. That's happened under COVID. Many, many rich people have made a lot of money out of COVID. And at the same time, we've had over 160 million people slumped into poverty because of COVID. At the moment, we've got this tenant landlord scenario in Australia where many renters haven't paid rent, and how are they going to back pay all their money that they owe to their landlords? I mean, this is a reality in Australia. How many people are going to be made homeless because of COVID? Was COVID necessary to the point and to the extent that we took measures to shut down our whole economy for weeks and months? And, it's coming up to years now, right? It's over a year now.
Well, yeah.
So in history, we know that they isolated the sick. They never isolated the healthy, because the healthy person needs sunlight, fresh air, nutritious food with, from good soil, and healthy and clean water to thrive. And your immune system strengthens. And it's your immune system that overcomes that disease, that virus, naturally. Sunlight kills diseases and airborne and on the surface of the skin. These things are a natural sanitizer to our bodies. That's how our bodies are made. So we're neglecting, again, the basics. Using nutrition as a prevention to these diseases should be the focus in our communities. And it's a healthier, better way forward, holistically, not only economically, right, but it's better for the environment. And it's better for communities and families. So why aren't we focusing on health alternatives rather than running to the pharmaceutical companies? That's because, unfortunately, many members of Parliament, including the Prime Minister, have had big donors, such as the pharma companies, be part of their campaigns and elections and make sure that they are elected in. And, of course, these things are quid pro quo.
Well, and look, and I joked about it. I don't even think I joke about it, but, all these parliament people, people shouldn't be donating to politicians, and people should be out buying and selling politicians. They do. Let's just make it transparent. Who owns you? So which companies bought your ScoMo, just so we know what your what your focus is going to be. Who owns Mark McGowan? Which companies are owning him, and then the people can decide whether they find it or not, as opposed to what we've currently got. And you did hit on a pretty important thing there. So the government shuts down the economy. You can't go to work. And I know a lot of people. I'm hospitality based. I know hundreds of people who are all just, sorry, you go stay at home. And they go, well, I've got rent to pay. Oh, well, you're not going to have to pay the rent until you're back at work. But then you've got to back pay it. So you're automatically going into a debt you didn't ask to be in. You can't work. So legally you're being told you cannot leave your house. So you can't earn, which is a crime in itself, stopping you from being able to earn a living, while creating a debt that you didn't want. And when you were working previously, you would have been fined to pay it. So now instead of paying X amount of rent, $100 a week for argument's sake. Now you're paying $200 a week as soon as COVID's back. But you're back at work, so it's fine. Complete bullshit, complete nonsense, and somehow people haven't revolted. I don't know what it's going to take in this country for people to actually revolt. They're busy worrying about women in parliament and hurt feelings and bullshit like that. All while this is going on, I don't know how it happens. I mean, they like to distract us with circuses. I know that, but
that's exactly right.
Mate, now you've been around the Liberal Party for a long time, and you've obviously no longer got an alliance with them. How often were you sexually harassed in the Liberal Party in Canberra? Did you get plenty of action, or what? Was it was it a hot hub for a good time, or what?
Yeah, look, it's there's a definite culture of expectation, and there's definite pressure, and you know what? I realized very early on that you make the decision to be a part of that culture the moment you accept those invitations to those drinks. So for me, part of protecting myself was not going to many of the after party functions, well, not going to any of the after party functions, just the main ones. And look, but Canberra has a really toxic culture, and unfortunately I did experience it myself at the university there.
Was that because you didn't find any of those particular fellows particularly attractive, or what's the story? Was it
I've got more.
It's one of those things where I look at it and I go, you're aware of the culture, and you jumped into the ring, and it's been arguably called a man's sport, I suppose. And I watched Credlin.
It's a big boys club. It really is.
Yeah, and you're certainly no pussycat. You're not going to sit there and take bullshit from. Can I call them wankers? I mean, I know the type of guy. I can fully envision the type of guy that is running around staff in Canberra. Like you still.
A lot of them are privileged, and a lot of them feel entitled. Let's just say that.
So, is it a fair argument that for the quotas, should we be having quotas?
Look, I don't think women are mentored well enough into Parliament. So my journey, for example, I had a female incumbent member of Parliament approach me back in 2007. I was speaking at a women's conference, and she said, "We've got to have you on our team. You've got to join. Come run with us as a candidate. You're amazing." And so, unfortunately, there wasn't much mentoring that occurred. And again, throughout the Liberal Party, I had idolized a lot of the successful women in the Liberal Party, but then I found out about their character or lack of values or compromises behind the scenes. And so I kept my distance because I'm like, I wanted to be like you until I found out what you were like.
Yeah.
And then as time went on, I realized that you really just got to make it on your own when you're a woman, because the men stick together, the men promote the men, and the men protect the men. And so it really is a boys' club. And the women, unfortunately, when they get to that high level, they don't want to compete with other women. So they don't really mentor them, and they don't really support them. So, there's not much of a sisterhood in politics, unfortunately. And you know what? I'm keen to bring it in. I'm keen to create a coalition of sisterhoods, of women who are passionate about representing their community, serving their community, being representatives in that highest public service possible, which is politics.
Which is, it's fantastic. And I admit, a couple of years back, I was a big Peter Credlin fan. Somebody like Julie Bishop, and I went, she's doing a really good job. But here in the last 2 weeks, Peter Credlin's the one who's all of a sudden come out and go, there's been gay orgies at Parliament House when I was in charge, and we had to sack these. But hang on a minute, how come you're only bringing it out now? That seems a bit strange, Peter. Hang on, you've dropped the ball big time. And then you look at Bishop come out the other week going, this boys club and da-da-da. Well, hang on a minute. Why didn't you do anything about it when at one stage Peter Credlin was arguably the most powerful woman in this country? Julie Bishop the same. Yet none of this shit, they did nothing about it, made no real attempts about it during the time when they actually had legitimate power and could have done something about it. Now, and you know, and I'm not a feminazi by any stretch of the imagination. I'm pretty old school in a lot of that sort of way. I call myself a sexist feminist. So I'm all for the girls who want to go and do. And if you want to stay at home and make family, make family. If you want to be dominant as a woman, go for it. You want to be submissive as a woman, go for it. You know, it's entirely up to you. So it's kind of the sexist feminist dub thing there. You know, I'm very supportive of the work you do, but if you said, I just want to stay at home and raise babies, I'd be just supportive and go, that's great. That's what you want to do. Go for it.
Yeah, I think that's great.
How come these two women, who were arguably at various stages the two most powerful women in the country, why did they do 2 tenths of bugger all when they were in power?
Let me tell you why. It's got to do with these two things. First of all, self-preservation. Second of all, how willing are they to sacrifice that in service to others? So if they're not willing to actually live out servant leadership, then they're going to choose self-preservation. And in doing so, it's a matter of containing that risk and damage and reputation, right, to the best of their ability while they're in those positions of power, because they want to retain their position, and that is their first priority. So, look, it is unfortunate, but it's the same in any area of society. Do we put ourselves first or do we put others first? When we put others first, we actually get a better result because we're wanting to respect them, honor them, serve them. And in turn, we receive that as well. I'm a big believer in what you sow is what you reap.
Yeah, well, look, I found it pretty disappointing that was, you know, just, and then to watch them come out now and do it, I found it all very, very disappointing. It actually disempowers women in many ways when they behave like that. Oh, well, I'm here. I'll just forget everybody. So these are the women who could have made a really serious difference. And you know, and I look at and when they say that the quota thing, it does my head in because there's a lot of women who don't want to be in politics, and I don't blame them. There's a lot of men that don't want to be in politics, and I don't blame them either. It's a shitty, nasty space. You know, it's not a pleasant place to be. You don't get involved in politics. I've been called everything under the sun as a view. You know, I've had the odd death threat and the odd, you know, I'm terrified. I'm sure same, probably worse actually, because you're probably less likely to punch somebody in the face than I am. But it's not a nice place to be. So to turn around and say, well, Parliament needs to have 50% women. Well, how the hell do you judge that? And if you've got a very talented man, does he miss out because there's a woman who's not all that interested, doesn't really want to be there, but based on the fact that the quota system, look, darling, you're in, sorry, son, because you've got a penis. That's a ridiculous concept in my brain.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
why don't bricklayers, if that's the case, right? 50% of bricklayers must be women. 50% of people out shoveling shit at the toilets at the showground must be women. We need 50% of people working at the tip must be women. I mean, how far do we drive this ridiculous nonsense?
Yeah, and that's a problem with quotas. I'm a strong believer on that you should be elected on merit, and obviously transparently so the people should be electing you into Parliament. But we know that our democratic voting system is fraught because it's the factions in the parties that are pushing candidates forward. They're the ones that are being backed, and they're the ones that are being promoted. So in my campaign, while I was campaigning for the Liberal Party for 6 months here in Baldivis, you know, the Liberal Party didn't throw any money into Baldivis, didn't promote my campaign, and didn't promote me as a candidate because I had opinions. I asked questions. You know, I didn't just toe the party line. I wanted to have a voice of my own. I wanted to, you know, have strong opinions about what should happen here. And they couldn't control me. And it was for that reason that the faction looked for stuff in my background, and they couldn't find any dirt because I don't have any skeletons. So instead, they looked to, you know, something I wrote a year ago, you know, in an article, opinion piece. And further to that, it was a question I posed. So this is the lengths they went to try and control a candidate. And look, unfortunately, this is a play of politics at the moment. It is their own demise. And look, I agree with you in relation to Julie Bishop and Peter Credlin. They should have done better as women for women. And we heard from Brittany Higgins, you know, when she approached women in her world and tried to talk about it, they shut her down. They just didn't want to deal with it. And I think that, you know, unfortunately, people are afraid to deal with these complex issues, particularly when it comes to such public, you know, scrutiny. But the person, like Brittany as an individual, didn't come first in that scenario, right? It was all the politicking that came first. How do we contain this? How do we manage this? How do we not let it, you know, spill into the public or let it affect our portfolio? So those were the conversations that were being had, not how is this person? She must be traumatized. She needs some assistance. So again, politics is coming before people. And that is the problem time and time again, whether it's about women in politics, whether it's about abuse or, you know, sexual assault in Parliament, whether it's about, you know, disgusting conduct in Parliament House. You know, it's all these political kind of agendas coming before the reason why they're there, the people they're representing, you know, the people's voices that they're meant to be listening to as well. They're wasting their time. What are they doing partying 24/7, right? That's our taxpayer money.
Very good question. This is taxpayer dollars money. Apparently they're, and you know, and they're pissed, Brittany and whoever the hell else she's in this room with, in Parliament House or in government building. Why are you in one? Why are you in the government building pissed out of hours during hours? There's a massive problem here. Now, I'm not saying what went on between the people in that room. It doesn't sound like it went very well. Why were they there in the fucking first place? These are the people who we're supposed to bow down to and allow to run this country in some capacity, and we should always trust government, of course. Yet there's this sort of bullshit going on. Well, what time of day was it? Were you drunk? Why? Well, you were drunk. Why were you all drunk? Why were you in the fucking office? Why are you shagging on the office? And then why is it all coming out 6 months to a year later that there was a sexual assault, rape allegation, whatever you want to call it, which... How the fuck did you all end up in this position? This is a stupid position to be in. It's the sort of position you would expect out of 18 or 20-year-olds drunk in a nightclub in the 80s or 90s, not in fucking Parliament. Am I wrong?
It's more common than you realise.
Look, nothing would shock me.
Okay, I lived in Canberra for 18 years. And part of my work was doing human rights advocacy for women. I was an anti-slavery expert for over 6 years in the Australasia region. That's what I did my PhD on. And I worked alongside women and I spoke to women who worked in brothels because prostitution attracts slavery, unfortunately. It's a huge industry for abuse of women. And, you know, I think as a society, we have a lot to be accountable for when we allow women in an industry to be abused every day and we're not doing anything about it. So regardless of that, I spoke to women who were very clear, emphatically said that when Parliament's sitting, we're our busiest. Everyone knows that when Parliament is sitting, the brothels in Fyshwick are busy. It's no secret.
You know, I mean, that's been an open secret for a long time. We all know that young men with lots of money are going to... I can't think of anything worse than paying for it, but I suppose it's been argued that people pay for it one way or another. But I'm far too stingy for that shit, and I earn my own money, so I'm not wasting on that shit. If you don't like it, I'll stay at home, thanks. But they're spending taxpayer dollars, I suppose, so it's not as valuable to them. It just comes and it goes, and they get their 200 grand a year or 180 grand a year or whatever, being a staffer for Parliament. And none of it shocks me, none of it surprises me, but it does fucking annoy me. You know what I mean? Have you ever paid for sex, Andrea?
No.
Oh, come on. Oh, women do it as well, surely.
Yeah, I wouldn't know about that.
I never have.
No.
That's, you know, it's, I mean, I've bought too many drinks for girls before, and I've probably, you know, I was married once. That's like sort of cost money, I guess. But oh, mate, it's a worry. It's a real worry, and I keep calling Parliament House a cesspool, and now everyone's starting to catch on. But they're going to stay there. Nothing's going to change dramatically. They'll, you know, ScoMo just shuffled the cabinet, for God's sake. What the hell is that? These people have been porters in this sort of strife. Now, if that was anybody else at any other job, they'd be out on their ass, or they'd be on suspension without pay, mate. Go home till an investigation's done. Pack your shit, go. Don't go near anything. The other girl that was involved in the Brittany Higgins stuff, I can't remember her name. You know, you've been reported as sexual assault. You've done bugger all. It was in your office. Again, why are there people in your frigging offices having sex? This doesn't make much sense. But anyway, and somehow you're still there and you've just been shuffled to a different department. You know, it just winds me up. It really does wind me up. And
why is Christian Porter still our Attorney General when he's got these allegations pending against him? Again, you know, it's huge. It really is. But it goes back to the philosophy of how we actually vote in our representatives, right? Do we do it on just the fact that we love that party? We're loyal to the brand. Do we look deeper than that as voters? And this is my challenge to voters, you know, do your research, make an informed, educated decision. Look at their background, look at their character, ask them questions. What are their values? What is the belief statement? You know, what is the platform on which they're doing this, right? And unfortunately, because politics is a boys' club, they do protect each other in their, you know, past. And obviously a lot of the boys in the boys' club grew up together in Sydney private schools. And they all kind of, you know, hide each other's secrets because they know each other's secrets. So it needs to be changed. There needs to be reform. But the first step really is exposing it, you know, bringing it into the light and dealing with it, having a conversation, frank and fearless conversation about, okay, look, this situation is horrible. We put ourselves here, but how do we move forward? You know, what kind of a future do we want for our children and children's children? And who do we want running our country and how? Like, it's D-Day for us. We need to redefine, you know, politically our identity. And it's because there's a global crisis in terms of the same thing. Like, governments around the world are having this identity crisis. We can see it. All the democracies have been recently challenged by dictatorship style or, you know, totalitarian style leadership. And it's a threat in many countries, democracy countries at the moment, democratic. So we all kind of need to regroup, take a step back and try and figure out what we're doing into the future, because it's crunch time.
Well and truly, man. It's just, you know, getting the general public, if the general public, the average Joe, the 100-odd people that live in this street all worked out that it's about voting Lib or Lab or red or blue, pick somebody you like and support them, look into it, take some actual care into the thought process. You know, we watched Jim Molan here a couple of years, who absolutely dominated the voting booth. I think he got the highest individual vote in Australian history. He should be further up the food chain based on that. Now, I've had some veterans who aren't real thrilled with what he's done or what he hasn't done, but that's, I guess, but the people liked what they saw out of Jim Molan and they voted accordingly. But he also had the Liberal Party machine kind of, and plenty of media around it and things like that. How do we transform these people from thinking just Liberal? I'm a worker, so I'll vote for the Labor Party. I'm a business person and I like money, so I'll vote for the Liberal Party. And you and I both know that neither of those statements are true or relevant to either party. How do we change it?
Yeah, look, unfortunately, the struggle is the media are controlling the narrative. We saw it in Western Australian politics just recently during this election. The media totally controlled the narrative about who Marxist Mark was. Not that he was the dictator-style leader who shut us all down In the last instance, I believe it was on a false positive. So we were in lockdown for 2 weeks under a false positive test of COVID, where businesses lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And what have the people done? They've re-elected him because they're actually calling him their God, their savior. And there's such a danger in that, you know. There's not one person in the world that can help us or save us or, you know, do everything for us. It's just unrealistic. We need realistic expectations about what government is, right? It's up to us as the people, the community themselves, to get our act together and to create the community that we want to live in. Government are just administrators to make sure the books are balanced and it's ticking along okay. It's not their job really to create the society that we want. It's up to us as people. We have to start realizing that. And so, first of all, let's not put such unrealistic expectations on our governments and, you know, say to them, what are you going to do for us? Because it's a partnership, right? We're in partnership. They do their bit. We have to do our bit as a community. Number two, the narrative is being controlled by the media. How do we take that back? We need strong alternative, you know, voices in the media who will actually speak truth and who will speak to the opposition, who will expose things. You know, no one during the election talked about the false positive tests of COVID shutdowns and, you know, questioned these emergency power you know, laws and the Section 158 that allows an authorised person to detain you and forcibly take the vaccine. So no one is asking these questions. And of course I tried and therefore banned and listed as a conspiracy theorist. So this is the battle we're up against. We need to be realistic. We need alternative, you know, media channels, but we also need the funding from the right kind of sources to get that message out there and to make the alternate voices louder in the whole process. Because unfortunately, it's true. Whoever has the biggest check and pocket does win elections. It's as simple as that sometimes.
I hope you guys enjoyed the latest episode of Resolute TV. Be sure to, you know, subscribe and let us know what you think. We pump out the content because we believe in it. See you later, guys. Loving you from Sydney.